starting to take shape. Just for reference, you've got this tensioner on the balance shaft, and you've got that spring goes either side of those little brackets. Later when we tighten it up, that'll just slide across here, and then we tighten this bolt up here. New water pump. Water pump back on. And now we're on to the oil cooler, the engine oil cooler, which is this jigger here. And you've got where your engine oil filter bolts on there. Got the hoses off. On these oil coolers, you'll notice there's a little stop there. So that's where it sort of sits, and that way your hoses and lines will be lined up. Might be a bit of oil in there. And that's what it is. Engine oil circulates through that part, and water coolant circulates through the other part, through here. They can also get blocked pretty badly. Oil sender switch. Now we've got the engine oil cooler there. Had a little bit of a flush out of it. You can see how much rubbish has come out. There was actually a lot more than that, but we knocked our little filter over. It's gone down the thing. Always need to replace these, especially when you've had a major repair done, like an overhaul. And on these 4D56U, 4D56T motors, they have, if you have a look on the forums, there's always people complaining about overheating. Now I'll show you a little thing that I've found. We've got the side of the block there, on the right hand side of the motor, or the driver's side. We've got the housing that bolts onto that. Now we've got the filter here, and you've got the cooler bolts onto here. Now the question is, does the oil first go through the cooler, then the filter, and then back into the motor? Or does it go first through the filter, then the cooler, then back into the motor? So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the path of the oil through this housing. So we've got the oil pump, comes through this tube here, pushing through this way, and that's the port that goes to the cooler. Goes through your cooler. We haven't sussed out which circuit goes through where first, but if we blow through here, and that's the port that goes to the engine oil filter, it's blowing through there. It's going to the head, only through that port there. Just a bit of insight here. To clean these properly, you need to actually remove a couple of plugs. You need to remove this plug and that one. Which one? Yeah, it goes to that tube there. You need to remove this plug and this plug. You'll find the little channel where that little hole is there that's connected up to this circuit, and this circuit actually goes to the turbo, which is this one, and the other pipe, this one, goes to your vacuum pump that's on the front of on the head, driven by the camshaft, and that's creating vacuum for your brake system. So it's very important to actually make sure that that little hole there. You can't see, there's a little restrictor hole in there. There we go. You can see that little restrictor hole in that port. Tiny little hole. Now here's my attempt at explaining the oil flow. As you can remember, the oil comes, this is the top, it just sits up like that on the side of the motor. We've got the front of the motor over here. The oil comes in through here, goes into there, travels down this passage here and goes into your oil cooler. So it goes in that way, into the oil cooler, and then the oil comes back out through here. These two pipes here are just the water or the coolant, trying to cool it down. So it comes in here, circulates through your cooler, and then goes back out there. And then it travels toward your filter, which is down this tube. And it comes in there. So if you remember, the filter, it's got that rubber flap there, and that's where the oil's going in, coming in through there, goes through that flap that way. The flap's sort of like a one-way valve. It'll allow oil to go that way, but it won't let it come back. Goes through the filter element, Dacron, and then comes back out through here, which is this one, goes back down through there and comes out that rear port where this bolts onto. And then, as you remember, we put a bit of pressure in there, air pressure in, and it's blowing out towards the head at the back of one of the oil galleries or ports at the back of the head. This bottom section here, this one is connected to your turbo. You've got the big oil hose that goes to the turbo, and the other one, which is that port, that one actually goes to the vacuum pump that's driven off the camshaft. It's located on the front of the head, right next to the power steering pump. But that little orifice there, I'm not sure what that does. If anyone can fill me in on that information, much appreciated. So what does this tell me? This tells me that if you read on any of the forums, these particular motors have a big overheating issue. What I believe happens is that the cooler gets blocked prematurely because the oil comes straight out of the sump through that pickup, if you remember, goes through the oil pump and then pushed straight into the cooler. So the cooler is going to get all that nice muck, unfiltered oil in there all the time. And over a very short period of time, it'll get blocked. There's all little fine little chambers in there. I probably should cut it open one day and have a look what they look like in there. It's just a whole heap of little sheets that are sort of put together, and you have one section where coolant can travel around and the other section engine oil can travel around. What we're going to do with this, how we're going to improve that problem, is we've ordered a remote filter fitting, and what they are. So what that's going to mean is that the filter, the remote filter that we put on, is going to be the filter that's coming straight out of the sump oil, going through the oil pump and then going through that filter. Then it's going to go into a cooler, something like this. And then out of that cooler, it's going to go back into here and travel through the original factory filter. So the factory filter will probably not get as dirty as the other filter, but the benefit of having two filters along with better filtering is that you've got more oil volume. It's going to actually help keep everything cooler as well as keeping it cleaner. coated the gasket with engine oil, and I just took out a little bit of that gasket because it was covering that little port there. I didn't like that. And there are 4 bolts, one longer one and 3 the same length. Bolted back on. We've put a bit of Celastic gasket cement on the plugs, put it all in, and now basically this pipe here went back into the oil cooler, and this one went in there. Not that one, that's a vacuum hose one. So these 2 hoses need to be joined. We're just going to make a loop instead of going through. There we go, went like that. But we're not going to put the cooler there. We're just going to join those 2 hoses there. And this one actually goes from a smaller diameter to a larger diameter hose. And this one's the same. So we'll just put a little copper piece in here. There we go, we've gone from 3/8. We've got a reducer from 1/2 inch to 3/8, so we had to put a little brass reducer fitting in there, and we've just joined it from there to there. And that before, as you saw, went into the cooler. And apart from what goes on the side of the head there, we've got the engine mount, everything's basically on there. We might have to tweak these hoses a bit, might have to bend this pipe a little bit. We're not sure when we get that remote filter adapter there. So through the magic of television, we've got this adapter. So we've got the adapter there. We just thread that in here into where originally the oil cooler went. And then we have the adapter, and that basically just threads onto there like so. This is a remote oil filter adapter, and we'll tighten that up when we're ready. And then basically from here we go into this adapter, which will be bolted somewhere on the chassis or in a convenient spot. Like so. And we put a filter on here. So we'll have a line that goes from here into one of these, and then from one of these we'll go into the cooler, into one side of the cooler. Then from the other side of the cooler, it will go back into here, into the other pipe. And that way we'll have filtered oil going into the cooler, going straight out of the pickup or out of the sump, through the cooler, or through where the cooler was, into a filter, into the cooler, back into this other. It'll go back through this pipe, back into that original factory filter there, just where my finger is. And hopefully that will save that problem of the cooler getting contaminated with fine muck. You'll have an extra volume of oil, and you'll also have 2 filters.